So, Clem, you're a drummer, a session drummer, and a group drummer. You've been around for quite a while now, played lots of hits. How did it start?
How did it start? Well, the usual way that most of the guys started in those days. I joined a group in the end of the 50s, a rock and roll group, which started quite by chance actually, because we went to see a Rock Around the Clock. Came out and my mate, who was a guitar player, I mean I wasn't sort of into music then, said, oh, let's form a rock and roll group. I says, all right. He said, what do I play? He says, you play drums. So I said, okay. So I did. I mean, I know it sounds far-fetched, but that is exactly how it started.
And did you start on a real drum kit, or was it pots and pans?
No, it was funny enough, it was on my dad's till in his shop, because I used to work in his shop as a counter hand, you know, in a cafe. I used to be on the till doing this all day, you know, driving everybody mad. And in fact, my old man said that if you don't stop it, half the staff are going to walk out. So, I mean, that's really basically how I started playing. And then I just used to practice sort of in my lunch hour and my after work and things. And I really got into it. You know, after I've been playing for a little while, I suddenly realised that I liked it, because I never really looked at it as a future career.
It's been said, and I'm not going to say who said it, but it's been said that you taught the UK session business how to play rock and roll music. Well, if that's the case, who taught you? Who did you listen to?
I listened to sort of American records. I mean, in the late 50s and early 60s, I mean, all we had to listen to was American records. I mean, I remember the days when, you know, the sort of normal rock and roll rhythm that we've got now was called a rocker shake. And if you sort of swung it, it was a rock and roll beat, and if you wanted it straight, you say, "Oh, do a rocker shake rhythm." It was just listening to American records, basically.
Sure. We come to Abbey Road, where we're standing now, and I understand that your very first proper session was in this room, Abbey Road Studio 2, with Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. And and the song was Shakin All Over. Can you remember that song in those days?
I do actually, yes, it was in here. It was my first ever recording session. I mean, to quite honest, it was quite a nerve-wracking experience. There was a quite funny incident happened on the session actually, because we were upstairs in the box listening to a playback, and Peter Sullivan, who was the actual producer, who went on then to produce Tom Jones and other sort of big artists, said to the guy, because those were the days, believe it or not, when the engineers used to wear white coats and collars and ties. And we were standing up in the box just up there, and Peter said to the engineer, he said, could you give me full echo chamber and also full reverb? And the guy said, but you can't do that. And Peter said, what do you mean I can't do that? That's what I want. And the guy said, no, look, and lifted up this BBC manual and says, look, it says in here, in this BBC manual, you cannot do that. So Peter just sort of said, well, I don't care what the manual says, just do it. And that's how we got the echo on Shakin All Over. And the echo chamber itself is just out the back here. And of course, after 10 o'clock at night, you weren't allowed to record in here because of the noise for the neighbours in the echo chamber.
And this is because I presume the echo chamber was a speaker and a mic, and it actually was a room, an empty room.
Oh yes, it's just literally, it's an empty room with, you've got a mic one end and you've got a speaker the other end. The sound comes out on one end and is picked up again on the other end, and it's like really working in a church.
And when you set your gear up in this room, were you aware of the microphones around you? Did you know what was happening or how to get the sound that was required?
No, I mean, I just set up the way, you know, I'd normally set up my drum kit in a sort of ordinary live situation. And the guy came down and mic'd it all. I mean, I remember sort of in those days we never took the front head off the bass drum. It wasn't until I started doing sessions later that I started taking the head off the front of the bass drum. And the guy just had a mic in front of it, and you know the bass drum was going boing, boing, boing. But I mean, the thing, it didn't really matter in those days. And I think it was, from what I can remember, they had one overhead and one actual mic across the snare drum.
And this is mono, wasn't it?
Oh, it was all mono. Everything was mono. Yeah, stereo. My God, you know.
Were vocals live then?
Oh yeah, the vocal was done live, obviously, because I mean you didn't have the overdub facilities in those days, apart from, you know, jumping from one to the other, you know, sort of playing it on one tape record and then overdubbing onto the other one and back again.
Clem, what was the first real session you did?
Actually, the first real session I did was actually in here, in number 2, which is a thing called Shakin All Over by Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. And at the time I was one of the Pirates. And I got £5, 15 shillings for the session, which was 5 guineas for the actual playing and 10 shillings porterage, as they used to say in those days.
Was this in a little brown envelope?
Oh yeah, the man came down with this little brown envelope with the cash in, and you had to sign for it and all that. And actually, I did re-record Shakin All Over in this studio some years later, about 5-6 years ago. And the guy rang me up. We were doing a film session for Hammer House of Horrors, and there was like 3 original songs and 2 written. And one of the originals was a thing called Shakin All Over. So he said to me, "Do you know it?" And I said, "Well, yeah." So I said, "Have you got any parts?" And remember that the rest of the band knew that I'd actually played on the record, but he didn't. And I said, "Have you got any parts?" He said, "No, we're going to have to busk it." I went, "Oh." He said, "Well, look, the thing is," he said, "to make it simple," he said, "there's a funny drum break in the middle of the record." He said, "Well, leave out," he said, "because you probably won't be able to play it anyway." He said, "So we'll go straight into the guitar solo." So I said, "Oh, okay, fine." So when we came to the drum break before the guitar solo, all the guys stopped and I did the drum break. We finished, and the guy was absolutely amazed that I played the drum break correctly. You know, he said, "God, that sounds just like the original." Because the whole studio just fell about laughing. You know, but I've had some fun with it, actually.
Sure. That was your first session, and then you moved on through a couple of bands. And do you want to tell me about the bands?
Yeah, well, I left Johnny Kidd early 1960, and I joined a group called the Tornadoes, you know, which had a number called Telstar, which was a big #1 throughout the world.
That wasn't recorded here, though, was it?
No, that was recorded in Holloway Road in a front room, actually, which the engineer was a guy called Joe Meek. I'm sure most people know about him. He had quite a lot of success, but it was literally a front room.
Fantastic. And then, at some point, you drifted into sessions permanently. How did that happen?
I left the Tornadoes sort of midway in around about 65, because, you know, the Beatles had come along talking about Abbey Road, and sort of literally knocked sort of instrumental groups for 6. Even the Shadows were struggling at the time. And I sort of just drifted into sessions. I was doing sort of demo sessions down at Southern Music in Denmark Street. And I then joined a group called the Ivy League, which we had a few hits with them, Tossing and Turning and various other things. And through doing sort of demo sessions, I was getting called by the producers saying, "Did you do the demo for this record?" or "Did you do the demo for that record? And could you come and do the master?" And that's how basically I sort of fell into sessions.
And who have you played with since that you admire or can remember? Any standout dates?
Well, I mean, getting back to Abbey Road again, you know, #2, I mean, there's quite a lot. I mean, I did Devil Woman with Cliff Richard, that was done in here. I did an album with Paul Jones, who was with Manfred Mann, and that was done in here. I did an instrumental album with Paul McCartney in here for George Martin. I did Lily the Pink, Would You Believe, with the Scaffold, that was done in here. And I did Michelle with David and Jonathan, which was in the charts. That was also done in #2, Abbey Road. So I've got quite a connection with the studio. It brings back some lovely memories, actually. And I might add, it hasn't changed one jot. It's still exactly the same as when I first walked in here in 1950 to do Shakin All Over. And it's great because it's a part of musical history in England, and I think it's wonderful they've kept the character the way it is.
Abbey Road has its good points, the decor, and so I'm sure there are a few minus points. Anything that has upset you about this building?
Yeah, well, it's not the building, it's outside the building. Usually that used to upset me, was when you drove up in your car. I mean, those days, you know, we didn't have roadies, and you used to arrive here and sort of try and unload and get your gear out, and it was the usual story, you know, "You can't park here, sir, you know, this is staff only." And I said, "Well, yeah, but I've got to do the job, you know. I don't care, once you get your gear out, go and move it." Although I will say in those days it was a lot easier because there wasn't any meters like there is today, so it was a little easier. And then there was a little guy who appeared, I think his name was John. He was a gem, and he was always, "Are you here tomorrow?" "Yeah, I'll keep you a space, Clem, don't worry." And he was great.
Back to Shakin All Over. What can you tell me about the engineer, what the headphones were like, and what the desks were like in those days? I understand the faders were.
Well, the faders used to be back to front, which was disconcerting. You know, like normally if you push them up, they get louder, and if you pull them back, they get quieter. But It was the other way around here. It was if you pulled them back, they got louder, and you pushed them up. And I suppose the engineer knew what he was doing anyway. But I mean, it was disconcerting watching it. You're thinking, no, they used to be turned up, not turned down. You know,
that's the BBC mentality, isn't it? That's
exactly. It is
a corporate thing.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, you know, about the BBC manual coming out, you know, and running the session. I mean, that's what the sessions were run on. You know, it was the BBC manual, and I think it was they used to use the EMT. I can't remember the actual number of the tape. I always remember there were two different shades of green, dark green and light green, and it was all mono, of course. It was, you know, straight down. There's no 8-track or 16-track. It was all straight down. If you got it wrong, do it again.
What did it feel like when you walked from here up the stairway into the control room and heard a playback?
A long way, basically. But it was. I actually was talking about that. I always remember another incident early on in my career as a session man, which I was very keen, and I always liked to listen to a playback. You know, I think because, you know, we all did eventually. Because at the end of the day, you wanted to know what you'd done was right or did it sound right. And I was walking up the stairs across there, and this voice is, "Wait, where do you think you're going?" And I just said, "Well, I'm going to listen to a playback." And his voice came back and says, "You don't do things like that here. You come down here and sit here and do as you're told."
This is one of the orchestra?
Yes, it was, yes. I think probably one of the gypsies at the time. And I said, "Well, you know, you do what you like. I'm going to go listen to a playback." And I did. I mean, as far as headphones are concerned, when I did Shakin All Over, I don't actually think I had any headphones. They didn't have any in here. None at all.
Live in the room, listening to each other.
It was all done live in the room, just sort of acoustically. And you know, well, I mean, in fairness, we had rehearsed it quite a bit, so we came into the studio, we basically knew what we were going to do. So you know, it made it a lot easier.
You've amassed a lot of experience with your playing. Have you any pearls of wisdom to give to players coming up through the ranks now?
Well, I mean, what can I say? Is just that, yeah, make sure that you get what you're worth. I mean, I think this was the biggest thing with us. You know, I mean, I was, you know, I was a musician. I wasn't a businessman, and I think that we were put upon a little bit. You know, we never really got what we were worth. And when you think of the amount of money that was made out of our product, you know, we never really got our just rewards, I don't think. And the only thing I can say to the guys now, I mean, for what there's left of the business is, yeah, whatever you do, make sure you get what you're worth. When, you know, I talk about what's left of the business, obviously when I started, and, you know, going back a long time, you know, everything was live. You played your instrument live, the bass player played live, the piano player played live. When computers sort of came on the scene, you know, everything was done basically by computers and machines. I think it's taken a lot of the sort of soul out of the business, because at the end of the day, you know, a musician plays as he feels. If he feels sad, he'll play that way. If he feels great, he'll play that way. I mean, you can't look at a machine and say, "Oh, I don't feel too good today, play sad." You know, it doesn't work. And I think this is why I say that they've ripped the heart a little bit out of the music business by putting it all on machines where live musicians aren't involved. And I think it's a shame, because obviously the volume of work isn't there that it was there in the days in the 60s when we were doing it. Because, you know, this was the capital of the music world. Britain, that was the capital of the music world. Also, I mean, talking about that, you know, this evidently was the original purpose-built studio in the country. I mean, most of the other studios were buildings taken over and made into recording studios. So this was actually built as a recording studio. And I think it's 64 years now, which is very poignant, isn't it? When I'm 64.
Oh God, I haven't done this for years now.
Surrounded by drummers, pocket drummers.
Oh, where is Ray when you need him? His nephew was my drum roadie for a while.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. My nephew used to drum to do he used to do all our roadieing, you know.
We were talking a couple of minutes ago about your career spanning decades.
Decades, thank you, Bob.
And while we're talking, Stuart Elliott has arrived, and to give us his view of playing today in a room like this.
I haven't been here for, must be about 6 years now. I virtually lived here in the late 70s. Just back-to-back albums all the time.
Which artists?
Well, I was in Cockney Rebel, the drummer in Cockney Rebel. We did about 3 albums here. Alan Parsons, who was here today, we're cutting a track with Art Garfunkel, and Al Stewart, in fact, in this very room, right where you're sitting. There's so many memories. This place, it's just unbelievable.
I think it's great actually to see Stuart in here actually walking in with a live kit, because like this day and age, it's usually computers and drum machines, and I hope that it's going back that way where they're getting actually guys to walk in and play live. I think it's marvellous, and I hope I'll be doing plenty more, Stuart.
Well, no problem with the playing. I was walking. There's a bit of problem with the walking now. Your legs are not what they used to be.
Tell me about it.
Well, I think it's working out a lot quicker now to lay down my drums anyway, isn't it? By the time you program.
It's a lot quicker. I've been through all the programming thing. I'm still going through it, but it's a bloody nightmare. It really is. I was speaking to our bass player yesterday, and he's got a drum kit at home, and he doesn't program anymore. He does drum loops, and he said it takes him about 5 minutes to do a drum loop that it would take him 3 hours to program. And I'm kind of... this is the whole thing that always amazed me about the whole business is, because they'd get a guy into program and they spend hours programming, they get the guy into play it and he does it in 5 minutes, and they spend 13 hours to sound like somebody else.
But who has the better jokes?
The drum machines can't tell jokes.
You do.
Good or bad. Good or bad.
So would you say, from your experience, which is sort of like you were spanning quite a few years here, obviously you started like maybe 15 years or after,
Clem was in full swing when I was starting.
I'm glad somebody realised I swung anyway. Thank you very much. Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah, I mean you were like one of the top guys at the time.
So I've been told.
And I used to do the occasional session, and there'd always be Clem's flight cases waiting to sort of be moved out and me in.
And how things change, as they say.
Yeah.
And it's good.
Yeah.
No, it's good to see it, because when I was Stuart's age at the time, and I was given a chance to do what I did, and I feel a little bit sorry at this present time that Stuart and people like Stuart, who are great players, have not got the volume of work there to be able to do what they want to do. They should be working 12 hours a day, playing.
When Stuart started, there was an acceptance of rock rhythms and so on, but when Clem started, it was the tail end of a jazz field to drumming, wasn't it?
That's right.
Was there a kind of rejection by other drummers of your style?
Oh yeah, I think the difference in styles between a jazzer, if you like, and a rock and roller. Most of the jazz technique was just straight rhythms on the bass drum, and just fours, and all the technique came from the top of the kit, the snare drum and whatever, and the cymbal. And it suddenly reversed, where you got the time being kept at the top end of the kit, and the bass drum was doing all the little bits and the fills and the kicks and whatever. And I think thank God, it was one of the reasons I got into sessions, because I learnt to play rock and roll. I wasn't a jazzer. I didn't go play in a jazz band. I didn't play in an orchestra. I didn't play in a big band. I was just I went to the RCHM, the Royal College of Hooligan Music, and that's where I learnt my trade, if you like.
Royal College of Hooligan Music. So when you started, you weren't a session player, you came out of a band, did you?
Yeah, I was a band. I was in a band. I think I've always, in my heart, always been in a band. That's what makes me happiest. Sessions were great, when you're young, sessions are welcome, you really love doing them. But I think they can take away something from you if you're so inclined.
Yeah, very true. I don't know. Stuart probably. When I started, I didn't know there was between a crotchet and a hatchet. Literally. People used to throw parts in front of me, and I'd look at them and go, "What the hell is that?" I couldn't read a note. There was an incident when I was doing a film session, and it was a horrendous part. I should never have been asked to do it, because the guy came over and said, "What the hell are you playing?" I said, "Well," he walked over and he looked at the part. I said, "Do you realise you've got your part upside down?" And I hadn't got a clue. That was the difference, obviously I learnt to read pretty quick. It was like, read it and play it or get out. And when you've got a bomb on your neck, you soon learn.
Who were the other players you played with? What other instruments? The bass and the keyboards and guitars. Anyone we'd know? Or?
Yeah, I mean, the bass player, Mo Foster, who was very famous. I worked with quite a long time with Cliff Richard.
Yeah, whatever happened to him?
I don't know. I've never seen him for years. Herbie Flowers, who was with Sky and also with Blue Mink. Alan Parker, that was with Blue Mink. I mean, Jim Sullivan, Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones. I mean, I did an album at Olympic with John Paul Jones on bass, Jimmy Page and Jim Sullivan on guitars, Nicky Hopkins on piano, myself on kit. And we were doing a single for Donovan, which was a thing called Hurdy Gurdy Man. So, yeah, I played with quite a few sort of well-known players.
So, Cockney Rebel then for you, that was your first sort of big band?
It was the only band. Yeah, I came straight out of that Intercessions. I'm now in a band with Alan Parsons, but there's been a long time in between.
Does Kate Bush count as a band, or is it?
No, that was a session, but it's more of. I don't really class it as a session. It's kind of a more intimate thing.
You're the man.
Album project.
You were the man that caused me problems when I had to do Kate Bush on live on Top of the Pops.
Oh, that was you, was it?
It was me. So I remember cursing. I thought, what the hell? Why do these people have to be so good? And then I have to walk in and have to play what they've been playing. I haven't got a clue what he's playing. It was that funny thing with that sort of 5/4 bars in it.
Wuthering Heights.
That's the one. Yes, that's the one. Drove me mad. Actually, Top of the Pops. It was a horrendous day, and I thought this is it, the end of another job. So thank you, Stuart.
You're very welcome.
But that was a pretty special part of the time, that bit of the Cockney Rebel thing. You were really out there, weren't you? Really consider what was around at the time.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Yeah, I didn't realise that at the time. In fact, at the time, I didn't think we were really all that good. But looking back on it, I think there was something kind of special in a sort of raw, messy kind of way.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought
yeah,
it was really
yes.
stuck out then. You know, it was a real sort of, it had a sort of slight edge to it that made it stand up.
Yeah.
It's a funny situation, isn't it? Still, I mean, when in the 60s, when I was with the Tornadoes and I was Johnny Kidd and I was all those bands and that, I mean, quite frankly, at the time, it's just a job. And I mean, as I said once before, that if I'd known it was going to be that important 34 years later, I'd have played a bit better.
There were, in the 60s and 70s, there were bands, well-known bands, the chart bands that you played on the records.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, Love Affair, Wombles.
People who, like an integral band like the Kinks.
Yeah, I've worked with the Kinks. I did quite a lot of stuff with the Kinks. I did a lot of stuff with the Love Affair, that were an integral band. I did.
God, you did that as well.
Yeah, did.
I sold him a pair of trousers once. The singer.
The singer. What?
Yeah, I worked in a clothes shop at the time.
Oh, you
I
must
was
be
17.
amazing,
I was 7. Yeah.
And also,
Wow.
of course, who
I've
else?
still got them.
And also bands like I did the Bay City Rollers. I did all the Bay City Rollers stuff. I did a group called Kenny. Loads of different bands.
Did you have to wear the trousers?
No, thank God I didn't. I mean, like with the Wombles, thank God I didn't have to wear the uniform, because I don't think I could have handled that.
Loads and loads.
Yes.
Thanks,
About 30 seconds.
Right. Yeah. No.